Hello and welcome to the second and last part of our Band in a Box 2022 for Mac Bootcamp video. Right now we're going to look at the RealDrums stems feature. This is a very exciting new feature, and with this release, over 50 of the RealDrums have these accompanying stems, and more will be introduced in the future. These are individual recordings of all the microphones used during the actual recording session. So whereas previously when you would load a drum style, you'd get an already mixed stereo recording of the whole kit, now you can also get all of these individual mics, which is great for doing a proper full mix of your song. So these are, of course, not isolated tracks of just the kick or just the snare. For example, you're still hearing the hi-hat there. But it's the mic that's miking the kick, snare, hi-hat, etc. So with each of these, you can still hear the other instruments to a certain degree, some more than others, but because it's, again, for example, the mic that's right over the snare, that allows you to raise or lower the sound of the snare within the context of the whole mix. There are also other uses for this feature besides just doing a custom mix of a single kit. For example, in some cases you might want to mix some different drum parts together, despite the fact that they're not isolated tracks. For this you mostly just need to experiment a bit. And I mentioned that the stems are not isolated parts, but in some cases they actually are. For example, if the kit was recorded and then the drummer overdubbed other percussion afterwards, those tracks would be isolated, and there are examples of this in these new drum stems as well. Right now we're listening to one of the new songs with vocals, the Holding On. I'll be talking about these songs with vocals a little later on in the video, but I'm going to go back in time a bit here to show you how I got all of these drum stems loaded. So I have one of our songs with vocals loaded, the Holding On, and I'd like to use this to demonstrate the new RealDrums stems feature. So I'm going to go into the RealDrums picker to start with. So first of all, I'd like to have a look at the RealDrums that do contain stems. Now you'll notice in the RealDrums picker here, there's a new column labeled stems. And for a lot of these it says 0, meaning those RealDrums do not have stems available. But for some of them, it has a number, like this one says 9. That means there are 9 stems as part of this RealDrum style. Now I can sort by this stems column, and that will then group everything above has 0, but everything with actual numbers beside them have stems available. And it ranges from some styles with 4 stems all the way up to some styles with 17 stems. Now if I look at this one up here, we can see in this area of the RealDrums picker, the stems are listed. We have the main mix, which is what all of the RealDrums have. But then we also have, for this one, kick, snare top, snare bottom, hi-hat, ride, tom floor, tom rack. So each one of these stems corresponds to a microphone that was used during the recording of that RealDrum style. So there was a microphone right on the kick drum, there was a microphone above the snare and one below it, there was a microphone pointed to the hi-hat, there was one above the kit pointed towards the ride, and then there were 2 separate mics on each of the toms, floor tom and the rack tom. Now, as I pointed out, some of the other styles have more stems. For example, all of these in this Nashville radio category here, they all appear to have 10 stems, while as this one I'm looking at right now only has 7. The reason for this is that the producer of this recording session for these RealDrums would use a setup that's based around the type of vibe that they're hoping to get with that kit. So often with jazz kits or really anything that you want to kind of sound rootsy, you don't necessarily need a lot of microphones if you really want to get a bit of a rootsy feel or a jazzy feel to it. That's why these Americana ones here had more of a stripped down setup to mic the drums. These ones, the Nashville radio ones, these are all part of the same session, and with those, the idea was to get more of a slick radio kind of sound. So if I click on one of these, let's have a look at the mics that were then used for this recording. There was a mic on the kick. There was also an additional sub mic on that. It also has snare top and snare bottom, hi-hat, floor tom, and a mic for the rack toms. But it also had overhead mics, also had room mics that were further back, and had another option for room mics, a bullet mic, which is a specific microphone design. So this one then has lots of options to blend together for the final mix. Now, another reason why there might be a higher number for the number of stems is that the stems also include any percussion instruments that were overdubbed after the initial drum kit was recorded. So for example, here, this particular style has a drum kit, and we can see all the mics for those. It also had bongos added afterwards, cajon, an additional mic on the cajon, and palmas, which is basically hand claps. Now, with the microphones that were used to record the kit, these are of course not isolated. Like, you don't just hear a particular tom with this mic. You'll still hear the other instruments around, but the microphone is focused in on that particular instrument. So it's useful for mixing and balancing, but you will still hear the other instruments in each of the mics to varying degrees. But in these instances where we've added percussion after the fact, those stems will actually be isolated. So for example, the bongo here could be used individually with different real drums, and it would be completely isolated. So you'd be able to use that in any other setting that you like. Same with the cajon and the hand clap palmas. Now I'd like to find a real drum style that will work for this song that I had here loaded already, the Holdin' On. Now that song is intended to very much be kind of a radio-friendly country song. So if I scroll back up, these Nashville radio drum kits would likely be appropriate for this. And since this style is a swing 16th style, you can see that right up here listed, the groove and the groove and the time signature. Swing 16 at 4/4, and it's 90 beats per minute. This one here is a swing 16th style, and it works well over a tempo range of 70 to 120 beats per minute. So that actually would be perfect for this one, which is right in the middle of that range. Now, you can pick individual stems, or just the mix, or you can just select this, and that puts a check mark beside everything. So that's what I'll do here. So now you can see all of these stems listed here in the mixer. And it's already given you a fairly good starting point for an actual mix as well. Now you can mix it however you like, you can make any changes you like, but it gives you a little bit of a head start with a specific mix here. Now the idea, of course, is not to use these with the main stereo mix that we had previously. It's still useful to have this, I find anyway, basically as a reference point. But for the purposes right now, I'm going to mute the mix so that we're just hearing the stems along with this song. So I'll just press play now and see how it's sounding with this mix that it's given us. So as I mentioned before, these are not isolated parts. So this is definitely the kick mic, and you can hear that it's very much, the kick is what's prominent here. But you can still hear the snare in behind. That's because the microphones don't exclude everything around them. It's still going to pick that up. But that's not the idea with these, is that you get an isolated sound. The idea is that you can blend and balance them. And you can also, at this point, start adding plugins. And that's one of the great things about the drum stems as well, is if you have your main mix, you don't necessarily want to apply a plugin, effects or EQ or anything like that, to the entire thing. You want to apply effects to certain elements of it. At least that makes it way easier to have full control. So for example, with this one, I could add a plugin on the kick. I could add a graphic EQ, and I'll just play just this main kick here And now if I wanted to kind of make it a little bit punchier, 60 hertz here. Well, here, I'll turn it way up. So here, let me take that out again. And then I'll put it back in. Another thing is reverb. And actually this is, I'm going to stop this here right now. And specifically talking about reverb, let me just solo the original mix again. Now it has some reverb applied, but if we add more, that reverb, of course, is applied to the entire mix. So if you apply too much reverb, you start to get kind of a washed out sound if it's applied to the entire mix. But let me just bring in a couple elements of this, maybe the kicks and the snare top and the snare bottom here. So let me just play a little bit of this. Now I'm just going to apply some reverb just to the top snare mic. Now, if this was the whole mix, applying reverb would also apply it to the kick. So listen again here. So maybe a little reverb on the kick might be nice, but you definitely don't want the same amount applied to the kick as you do to the snare or other instruments. Anyway, this again, the whole point of having the drum stems is to be able to isolate and apply the effects and the EQ that you want for the individual mics.
And it's the holding on that gets us through it all. Holding on to that final curtain call.
All right, I'm going to do another drum stems example. And in this case, I'm going to show you a use for just selecting a few of the drum stems rather than the full list. So right now I have a real drum style loaded here that does have stems available. So I'm going to go into the real drums picker again and take a look at these. So again, here is the full list of all of the stems available for this. But rather than pick all stems, I will pick the mix. And I'm actually going to use the mix in this case. But I'm also going to pick kick out, snare top, and snare bottom. Now the reason is that for the kick, one reason for picking just a few stems is to just give one of the specific drums in the mix an extra boost. So this kick can be used for that. And then another reason is, as I showed you in the previous video, having reverb or other effects just on specific stems is useful, and you can actually do that effects for certain instruments into the main mix. So that's what I'll use the snare ones for here. So I'll select OK, and now you can see that just those 3 stems have been loaded on here. Now before I start this, I also want to show you this icon here. That's a new icon indicating that these are drum stems. And one significance of this icon is to indicate that the part that's generated for this is the same as the part generated for the parent track. Now that's very important because while the kick, for example, may play a particular repeating pattern, it's not going to be playing exactly the same pattern throughout. So if this kick part was just a completely separate generation of the real drum, it might not exactly match the mix. But these icons indicate that they're all stems from a parent real drum, meaning that the generation that's created here will be exactly the same as this. And because of that, using this stem blended in with this mix is perfectly fine to do since it's exactly the same part, just only one mic instead of the full mix. So I'm going to generate and play now. So now we can hear the full mix of the drums, and I'll actually solo that. So now I'm going to also solo just the kick. So we have a full mix there, but we're also, this can be treated as just a booster of the kick drum. I'll turn it way up here. So that's too much, but it just gives the whole thing an extra boost. So now for the snare, I'm going to do something different. For the snare, I'm going to turn the reverb way up on this. So that's way more than I would want for this. But now, even because there's actually a snare in the main mix, I can just treat these as reverb tracks, basically. So the louder I turn the track itself, the more reverb gets blended into that mix. But it's reverb that's only applied to this particular snare and not applied to the full mix, which is what I want. I'm going to do one more drum stems example. As I mentioned before, some of the real drums that now have stems added include percussion that was overdubbed after the kit was recorded. And those therefore are completely isolated tracks in that you don't hear, even faintly, any of the other drum elements. For this reason, they're tailor-made for picking and using on their own. I also mentioned that you can also take stems from the main kit and mix and match those with other drums. Because of the microphone bleed I mentioned previously, this is more of a trial and error process, but I certainly have done that myself, and sometimes it's surprisingly good. So I have another one of our songs with vocals artist performances loaded, You're Moving On. And this one has electronic drums throughout, synth bass and synth pad, and then two guitars that come in at the C and D sections of the song. So I definitely want to add some percussion to this. I always like the combination of electronic instruments with acoustic instruments, so electronic drums with some real percussion will be great, and I'll even try adding a few stems from a kit as well and see how that goes. So, unlike the previous examples, in this case I don't want to remove the drums that are already there. I want to just leave those entirely alone and add some new ones. So right now my view is showing only active tracks. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm just going to show all tracks right now. So I'll add some drums to utility track 6. So the last time I was in this dialogue, I sorted it by stems, and I'll leave it like that now so that if I scroll to the bottom, it's like before, going to show me all of the real drums that have stems, and it shows me in this column how many stems there are in each one. And again, I'm going to look to the groove, time signature, and tempo of the existing song in this area. Even eighths, 4/4, and 122 beats per minute. Even eighths and even sixteenths are more or less interchangeable. So I'll just look for any even style that's 4/4 where 122 fits within the range. So for example, these ones would be too fast because the low end of the range is 180 beats per minute, so that's definitely too fast. This one actually would, 100 to 125, so 122 is within that. I could just double click on here to sample and see what this drum style sounds like. Not really what I had in mind. In fact, I'm not entirely sure what I have in mind. I just want to experiment with a few. This rootsy funk one. Yeah, that's also good. There's a merengue one here. It fits within that tempo range. But I also actually just noticed there's also a merengue that has the word perk at the end of it, meaning there's percussion added to that one as well. So let me check that one out. So that was the same demo we were hearing before, but it has some additional percussion added, some congo and some güiro. But actually, right now, I think I'm just going to try some drum elements. That one has a pretty cool tom pattern. Yeah, it plays a really cool tom pattern kind of near the end of every bar. And that, I don't know if that would necessarily work with this one, but I'd like to try. So yeah, I think I'm going to try that one. So I'm not going to select all of the stems right now. I will just select the 5 different tom mics here and see how that is. Maybe I'll add the kick as well. See how the kick sounds in the blend there too. So yeah, that's all I'll do. So I'll now press OK. And we can see that those have been added here. Now again, unlike the previous demos I did, these now aren't based off of the main drum track. So you can see that toms 1 through 5 have this icon, but the kick here does not have that icon. That means this kick track is kind of the parent of these, and then these tom tracks essentially duplicate the part that's created by the kick here so that they'll still all match up. So I'm going to just play this right now, and while it's playing, I'll probably solo some of these and see how they're sounding, and yeah, see how it fits in. Okay, so with this particular demo, the actual drum track is muted intentionally for the first 8 bars. So we were only actually hearing the toms for those first 8 bars, and then the electronic drums came in at bar 9. This was all set in the bar settings dialog. So that was actually kind of cool. Then we were just hearing these acoustic drums for the first 8 bars, and then we hear the electronic drums come in at bar 9. So I actually kind of like that. And I thought they were sounding pretty neat in that. I'll also mention too that in the previous demos, I told you that when you load the stems, they kind of come pre-mixed with a good starting point. And that's the case with these as well. In particular, toms are often panned. When you have different mics on the different toms, you have them go left to right. And so you can see the panning here, left to right for these toms. Basically, the way they're laid out on the drum kit, which is great. Reverb has not been added. There was probably reverb in some of the other stems if I had picked the whole kit. So I'm going to add some reverb as well, but I'll just start playback again from bar 9 here. Now I'm just removing some of the highs to get out some of the other, what we're hearing. And so we're now more only hearing the kick itself in this. So I did the same thing I did before to make it a little punchier. I brought up around 60 hertz. But then I also managed to get some of the other sounds of those instruments out by removing some of the high end there.
I just wanted the sun to shine a little like the ones on my dark dreaming. Maybe you were trying to be bad. Did you think that I want to be sad? Should have been, would have been, could have been mine. But you're moving on. Want to see me sink like a stone. Boy, you got me.
So now we really hear the electronic element mixing in with these toms. So that's pretty cool. I quite like the way that worked out. And I'm thinking maybe I'll now add some more. Maybe I will add some percussion. And it doesn't even have to be the percussion from this drum kit. I can try out some others and see if there's something else I might like. So again, I have my mixer here set to, as soon as I press play, it only shows me active tracks. But just so that I can select another one of those, I will go in and show them all again, just so I see what I have left here. And on utility 12, I will add another real drum style here. Now again, I'm going to scroll to the bottom so we have all of the real drums with stems grouped together. And now I'm particularly going to be looking at ones that have the word perc in them, because that means it's a drum kit with percussion added. And I'm going to look up in some of these funky ones here, see if there's something in here. I'll double click again to sample this. Now this one actually doesn't fit into the tempo range for ours, but actually this one does. Let me try this one out here. So yeah, that one might be kind of cool. And it looks like it has 3 percussion instruments. Angklung, which is an Indonesian percussion instrument. Kashishi is a kind of shaker. And then it also has congas. So I'll add all 3 of those. There you go. So they're added now. And just like before, the first of the group doesn't have that stems icon, because that's considered to be the parent one. And then these ones underneath it do have that stems, indicating that the part that is generated is based on the same part that is generated here, just with the different instruments. All right, so I'll now play this and try mixing them together and see how that sounds.
You were trying to be cool. Made me feel like I'm a fool.
So yeah, that was some fun little experimenting there, and I'm quite happy with the results. That tom group is really neat, and I love these new percussion instruments that were added. So you can see there are lots of great new possibilities with these drum stems. The next feature we're going to look at is the track settings dialog. This is a one-stop shop for everything to do with tracks, labeling, adding real tracks and real drums, adding modifiers like simple versions or half or double time, or even changing MIDI settings in the track. I'm finding I've been using this dialog a lot, and it really makes my workflow more efficient. So first of all, let's look at the feature in the feature browser, which you can access by typing /, just like you were entering a chord, and then enter. So I'll filter by track settings. And we can see here's the item here, 2022 new feature, track settings and actions. So that gives you a great description of the feature right here, but this is what I was looking for here. How do you access the feature? You can right click on the chord sheet, you can go to the edit menu, or there's 2 hotkeys. You can just type T and return as if you were entering a chord, or you can just type F7. And F7 is what I found I've been using myself to get into it. So I'll close this and just press F7. So here is the track settings and actions dialog. So first of all, in this upper area are all of the tracks. Now you can see here are the original Band in a Box tracks, but if I go to the scroll, you can see it also includes all of the utility tracks as well. Now I'll just go through some of the different areas of this dialog. For starters, here it shows you if the track is enabled or not, and if it's a real track, it shows you whether it's a frozen real track or not. If it's frozen, that means the performance won't be regenerated when you press play or even generate and play. If the track was an audio track, these settings here would be applicable: audio base tempo and audio transpose. And this one actually does have some audio tracks on it, so let me go down to those just so you can see. This one here is an audio track, and it can show you the base tempo is 100 beats per minute. What that means is if I was to change the tempo of the song to, for example, 105 beats per minute, it would need to stretch the audio track from 100 up to 105. And audio transpose is the number of semitones up or down that it's transposed, and this one is 0, so that means it's exactly as recorded. Now down here are real tracks, real drums, and even loops and user tracks can be added here. The real drums for the drum tracks is specifically for the original Band in a Box drum track, but this one here allows you to put real drums on any track, including the utility tracks. There are also MIDI options, including MIDI super tracks, as well as specific MIDI tracks from old Band in a Box MIDI styles. This area here has additional options. There are real tracks options such as the medley, which allows you to have real tracks switch from one real track to another. For example, on a jazz tune, you could have the saxophone soloing for a chorus and then a trumpet soloing for a chorus. But you can also have instruments play at the same time. For example, if you wanted to put 3 guitars on the same track and have a blended multi-guitar track. There are options for bluesy variations, simple variations that play less complex patterns for the entire real track. Direct input is also a good one. For our electric guitars, typically the main real track is the recording of the amp tone that the musician is playing through. So you get all of the effects as well as the amp tone and everything. But when we record those guitars, we're also simultaneously recording the direct input. So you can select this, and then you get basically just the sound of the electric guitar itself and nothing else, and you can add your own amp effects or any other effects that you like to those. Basses are also included in this, and even actually some of our new harmonicas. We recorded some gritty blues and rock harmonica, and typically that style of playing is done through a mic, and then the mic is put through an amp, and you actually have distortion added that way. So that's what the main real track is for those harmonicas, but again, we also have the direct input, so you can hear it without the distortion. There's an option here for the time bass. Most real tracks are used at normal time, but for example, this song is 100 beats per minute. You could take a real track that's nearer to 200 beats per minute and set it to double time, and that would treat it as 100 beats per minute without actually stretching it down. There are options for changing various MIDI settings, and you can even change the main mixer settings such as volume, reverb, panning, and tone. You can start and stop playback right from this dialog, and then you actually could mix here as well while listening to it. For that kind of thing, I definitely prefer to actually do my mixing in the mixer. But this area here is one that I've actually found I use all the time, and that's the label and the description area here. So I really like to have in my mixer, have my tracks all labeled properly, so I know what's going on as I'm playing through the song and then again as I'm mixing. And so I like to have, I'm going to move this over here so you can see underneath here. I like to have the track labeled accurately and correctly. And then here the track description. I like that to be labeled as well. Now with the track description, before we had the track settings and actions dialog, you would have to right-click in the description area, then you would have to go through several submenus to get to an area where you could then edit the description. So that was pretty time consuming, and especially if you have a lot of tracks where you want to write in the description, that kind of impedes your workflow a bit. But now with the track settings and actions dialog, you can do it quickly and easily. So for example, earlier I clicked on this artist track here, so that's what's selected now. So now I can just enter as the label, lead vocals, and I'll enter the same thing in the description. And I'll press update, and you can see that that's now being entered here in the mixer. And then without leaving this dialog, I can also go to utility track 1, and I'll put background vox for vocals. And for the description here, I'll write harmony vocals at bars. Now, I'm not sure off the top of my head what bars they're at, but I'm going to update this, and then I'll close this. I'll go to the audio edit window and click on the background vocals. Now you can see we've already added volume automation that we looked at in another video, but I can tell if I zoom in here that the harmonies occur at bars 21, 45, and 69. So I'll press F7 again. So I'll enter in bars 21, 45, and 69. And hit update. And we can see that's updated there now, which will be useful information to look at when I'm working through this song further. I've also been finding I'm using this track settings and actions dialog a lot for adding tracks, real tracks and real drums. So for example, I was thinking that I could add some percussion to this one. Maybe a couple tracks, maybe like a tambourine and a shaker. Well, let me scroll down to an unused utility track. I'll pick that. I'll select real drums on other tracks, not on the main real drums track. Now, earlier in the video, I used the actual filter to find some real drum styles I wanted, but you can actually achieve the same thing just by removing some of these checks. So I won't show if the feel does not match, and I won't show if the tempo is out of range. Now it's only going to show real drums in here that are swing, because that's what the song is set to, and where the tempo range allows for 100 beats per minute, which is what our song is set to. I'll do a further text filter here, and put in tambo for tambourine. And let me just try this one out. Sounds good to me. I'll add that. And that has now been added on utility track 2. And on utility track 3, I'll do the same thing. But this time I'll type shaker, and I'll try out this one. Sounds good to me. So I'll select OK, and there we have it. So now, without even leaving the track settings and actions dialog, I can start playback and even do a little bit of mixing right from within this dialog. I'll press play. Okay, so those are definitely too loud, so I'll change the volume.
Emily, where have you been? I've been walking around in a dream.
Ah, that's a lot better. And I can even add some reverb in here.
Stop and think of me. Can't you tell?
Maybe even add some panning.
For 7 centuries ringing a bell. Without you, my heart is just an empty shell.
So you can see how the track settings and actions dialog here can really help streamline your workflow.
We were so close.
With Band in a Box 2022, for the first time ever, we've included songs with vocals. These are 2 new artist performance sets containing over 50 original songs with vocal performances. These are located in your main Band in a Box folder in Artist Performance Sets, Artist Performance Set 11, Songs with Vocals Volume 1, and Set 12, Volume 2. Volume 1 is included in the free bonus pack if you order during our special, and Volume 2 is included in the bonus 49 pack during the special for an additional $49, along with a lot of other great content such as 60 bonus reel tracks, new MIDI super tracks, instrumental studies, and more. So right now I'm just going to play through some clips of a few of the songs from these sets, just so you get a sense of what they're all about.
Suddenly the sky turned blue. We were singing to the avenue. I needed something bad and it was you. Well, the days grew on.
Deep inside your weary mind, there is gold. It's your buried treasure. Keep in mind, it's yours to find alone. So be strong. And when the wind is in your sails, yeah, save a thought for me.
It's been a while since I've seen a smile I recognize on a summer night, and I feel so cold with Texas on my mind.
Suddenly I felt like I was 15, thinking that my life had just begun. I felt my cheeks turn red when you turned your head to kiss me, dancing in the school gymnasium. Will the forever be worthy of my love? Is yours for goodness sake. You take my breath away and leave me gasping just to say, mountains and valleys and rivers of fire, we will traverse them all with grace. We'll dig deep and rally when others expire. I know all I need to carry on is a glimpse of your sweet faces. Have a way. Woo! Been a long time since I felt that swing, with the moon up high like a diamond ring, shining down on everything below. As the music plays, we kick up dust, and this whole world could turn to rust. No one here would make a fuss, no. Radio in a pickup.
These are really fun just to check out, and it's cool to use them as examples of just what's possible in Band in a Box. There are a variety of singers and a bunch of different genres, so whatever you like, it's just cool to explore these. They're also good to try out your mixing skills, particularly with the new node-based volume automation feature we looked at in another tutorial. Another thing that's a lot of fun is trying your hand at a remix. I'll just clarify the terminology a bit here. Mixing is typically used to describe the process of blending a track, instruments and vocals, using the mixer to blend and balance them, and using plugins and effects to get all the vocals and instruments sounding as good as you can. Remixing, as it's used in the more modern sense, usually refers to taking a performance and completely changing the instruments. This is very common in modern pop music, where you'll often hear remixes of the same song where it's the same vocal performance, but the instruments, beat, and groove are totally different. So I'm going to try that with this song I have loaded here. This is kind of a modern pop song. It's got some R&B type guitars in it, a loop that plays throughout that gives it a modern flavor, and with a real drum kit. So I'll play a little bit of it, maybe the chorus here.
You don't wanna talk in the morning or in the afternoon. You just wanna talk when you're wasted, late at night in the same old room. And if I try to say I'm lonely, you don't understand. Treat me like my feelings are phony, and you're a super.
So I really like that performance, and I like the style that we have here playing along with it. I particularly like it when modern electronic sounds like that are in this loop here are mixed in with more traditional instruments like electric guitars and real drum kits. So basically, Band in a Box is tailor-made for the kind of remix I'm talking about, because all I have to do really is just pick another style. So in the bonus pack, there were some new modern pop electronic drums, and those also included the single electronic drum elements that made them up. And I believe we used those as part of a new modern reggae style. So I'd like to try that one out with this song here. So I'll filter by reggae, and I'll sort by date so I can see some of the most recent styles we've released. So everything in the list here has reggae somewhere in the name or listed in the genre, and we can see the newest ones are at the top, and that includes styles from Extra Styles Pack 13, Extra Pro 3, and more. Now, our song is even 16ths, 65 beats per minute, so these first ones in the list might not be ideal, but this one here probably is. So I'll double click on it just to sample what it sounds like. And yeah, that actually sounds perfect for this song. And this is the one I was talking about that had additional single drum elements. And this style also utilizes a new feature that allows us to put real tracks and real drums on the utility tracks. And in the style picker now, it shows you if there are additional real tracks or real drums on the style down here in the bottom. And you can see this has 7 additional tracks on utility tracks. And if I click here, these are all drums. For example here, electronic hi-hat. So this one is going to load these electronic drum elements as well as a real kit. So I'm going to select this one and we'll see how it sounds. All right, so that style has now loaded all of these individual electronic drum elements. And then it's also changed all of the instruments up here, including reggae drums, bass, and guitar. All right, so now I'm going to just start it again shortly before the same chorus that we listened to previously. All right, so that was really cool. Another fun thing about doing remixes is that you don't have to keep the chords exactly the same. You can reharmonize, picking other chords that will still work well with that melody. So for example, in that same chorus at bar 26, probably would sound good. Instead of the D, a B minor would probably sound good there. And then instead of going to A here, we could go back to the F sharp minor. So we'll type that in. And then instead of E for a whole bar, I'm not totally sure how this will sound, but I'd like to try the flat 7 chord of the key. So the key is A, so I'd like to try a G and then go to E. So I'll see how that sounds now. so yeah, actually I quite like that. I especially like the change in here. I was glad I tried that out. So now I'd like to try and incorporate a couple more features from Band in a Box 2022 to add to this. So maybe for those 8 bars here, I'll get a horn section playing. And a great way to add an instrument just for a small section is to use the MultiRiff feature. So I'll right click and I'll go MultiRiff. And then I'm going to want it at bar 25 and 8 bars long. So that's already correct in there. I need to pick the track to use. So I'll use an unused utility track here. And then I'll pick a real track to use. And I'll filter by horn section 65. And I think I'll just pick the first one in this list and try that out. Now I want it to start right at the downbeat, so I will not allow lead in. And so I'll just generate that now. You know what? That's sounding great to me. I don't even think I need to listen to the whole thing. I'm just going to accept that. And it was already sounding like it was at a pretty good level for what I wanted. I didn't want it too loud. Maybe I will just add some reverb to it there. So now I want to try maybe some motifs here. Maybe at bars 26 and bars 30, I'll use a motif just on the bass, and I'll have it play dot, 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 dot. So 4 16th notes, and then a hit at the beginning of beat 2. So I'll try that and see how that sounds. So I'll type M to go to the motifs dialog here. And first of all, I will exclude everything except the bass. I'll include, and I'll hit them, and I won't enter any chords. I'm not doing MicroChords here. I'm just doing the motifs. So I'll just put some dot, 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 and then I will rest. But I won't rest here in beat 4. So if the bass was already going to play something at beat 4, that's fine, it still can, but it won't play at all through beats 2 and 3. So that's at bar 26. I also want to copy that to bar 30, I said. So I'll hit 30 and I'll go copy MicroChords. Now I can see if I go in here, that's also been copied to here. All right, so I'll generate that and play and see how that sounds. So that the bass part played exactly like I wanted it to play. It played those little motifs at bars 26 and 30. All right, there's one final thing I wanted to do here, and that's to add some playable RealTracks. So I'm going to go to the piano roll for those horns that we just added. So this right here is the real charts for the horn section. The horn section is a real track, so it's actual audio, but the MIDI notes are here for display purposes. So I'm going to turn Playable RealTracks on. But instead of actually putting in a mute region to mute the horns, I still want to keep the horns. But the notes that we're putting here, I want to double on another instrument. So I'm just going to zoom out here so I can see the whole thing. And I'm going to select all the notes for those 8 bars. It did write some extra notes in the bar afterwards. I don't want those. But for these ones, I'm going to change them to playable. So now we'll have playable notes, but we won't be muting the horn section, so we'll actually get both. Now when I press the Playable RealTracks button, it loaded in the default sound for this horn section, which was a tenor sax. But I think I actually want something else. So here's the full list of the Playable RealTracks, and right up at the top there is vibraphone. So I'm going to try that one out. So if I select that, what we're getting now is we're still going to hear the horns, but on the same track, we're going to hear some MIDI vibes playing. Now, before I start playing, just so I can keep track of all of this, I pressed F7 to get into the track settings and actions dialog. So I'm just going to give this track a custom label. Horns, comma, vibes. And I'll update that. And we can see now that the track label has changed to show that. So I'll close that and let's give that a listen. So I just stopped it there because that's actually quite loud. As soon as I heard it, I could tell that's way too loud. So that's where this setting comes in here. I can adjust this. I'm going to turn that quite low, and then I can maybe bring it up from there if it needs it. So I'll start that again. Finally, I'm going to show you another way you can check out the songs with vocals, and that's right from the style picker. And there are two ways you can do this. First, you'll be able to actually hear the songs when you double-click on a style here that is one of the styles that we used with these songs with vocals. And then the other way is to actually load a song demo. You'll be able to load those song demos right from the style picker here. So first, let's look at how to filter to show these styles. We're going to go to the category filter here, and we're going to choose and show category here. So there are a lot of items in this list, but I'll filter by vocals. So that narrows it down to these three items, all style demos with vocals, and then set 11 and set 12. So all styles with vocals will show everything from both sets, or you can look at each one individually. So I'll just pick all style demos with vocals, so I'll see everything. So that's narrowed it down to this list of 54 items here. So now if I just start double clicking on these, I'll hear the actual song with vocal that was made with that style.
That swing, the moon up high like a diamond ring, shining down on everything below. Yes.
Been a long time since I felt that swing, with the moon up high like a diamond ring, shining down on everything below. I never fantasized about a bombshell. That ain't what I'm looking for.
And then the other thing you can do from here is actually use the Load Song Demo button to load that very demo.
Well, you can't get love from a dusty book, and you can't catch fish with an empty hook. Might not like what your boyfriend sees.
The next thing I'm going to talk about is the new RealTracks and Real Styles that we've introduced with Band in a Box 2022. This year with the main release, we've added 222 new RealTracks. That's 20 more than we've released in previous years. We've done 202 previously, but this year it's 222 for 2022. And in addition to that, in past years, our bonus pack has had 40 bonus reel tracks, and this year that's 60. So that's a total of 282 new reel tracks and reel drums we've added with Band in a Box 2022. And right now we're just checking out a few of the Johnny Highland soloists. So right now, I'm going to take a little time to show you how you can check out these new 222 reel tracks yourself. Probably the easiest way is to go into the style picker. And within here, there are a couple of things you can do. To start with, I'm going to sort this list by set number. That sorts the reel tracks by set, putting the newest ones at the top. So we can see set 400, which is the one with the Johnny Highland soloists, is right at the top. So if I double click on a few of these, we can hear samples of those reel styles associated with the reel tracks in that set. So that's one way to do it, to sort them like this and then go through and check them all out. The one thing though is that the set names are not in here. But there is a way we can actually have a look at all of the set names right here in the style picker. So I'm going to go to this other filter here and filter by specific reel track set number. And this one does have the names of the reel track sets. So I'll scroll to the very bottom of that. And we can see there is set 400, and it gives us the name, Classic Country Soloing with Johnny Highland. But instead of that, maybe I'll try a different one. Set 392, Doo-Wop Vocals, Classic Slow 12/8 Groove. And of course, you can also even load the song demo from here, and actually play it in the main chord chart. Finally, another way to check out these sets is to go into the Reel Tracks Demos folder. So in your main Band in a Box folder, go to Reel Tracks Demos. And then there are subfolders in here for every single Reel Tracks set. So for example, if I wanted to check out the Reel Tracks in set 386, Alt Rock Guitar 2, I could just open this and try out one of these demos. Now the file names start with the actual reel style that's actually associated with it. And for style names that end with a plus, that means it's a multi-style. So this one is going to have more than just the typical A and B substyles. So that would be a fun one to try out. So this one is Fast Punk Pop Guitars. I'm now going to show you the one-click downloader installer. We've introduced this with Band in a Box 2022, and it's now way easier to download the program, download all of the content that goes along with it that you've ordered and paid for, and it makes it so much easier to actually install as well. So I'm going to take you through all of the steps, starting with an email that you would receive once you've placed your order. You would receive an email just like this one. Now, these links and serial numbers will be blurred out in the video, but basically this is a clickable link right here. And then underneath is a serial number which you can use once Band in a Box is installed. This here is another clickable link because when I ordered the upgrade, I also included the bonus 49 pack as well. So I'll click on this first one up here, and that takes me to a web page. This is then a web page similar to the one you'd go to after you click the link in your email. Now again, some of the info here will be blurred out, but I have that same URL up here and the same serial number shown here. We also have that same URL down here. So first of all, we're going to download and install the one-click downloader installer. Banana Box for Mac Download and Install Manager. So it looks like the download has finished, so I'll install that. Alright, so the install manager was successfully installed. So I will run that. Alright, so the first time you run the install manager, you'll need to enable full disk access in System Preferences. But it gives you some pretty clear directions as to how to do that. So step 1, you just have to click here to open the security and privacy settings. And you need to click the lock icon to authenticate. Now what we're going to do is open the Applications folder and drag the Install Manager into this area here. So there's a handy link to open the Applications folder. And so the Install Manager, we can just drag it right into here. Now it tells you here, if prompted to relaunch, click Later. So I'll click Later. And then it says click the lock again to de-authenticate. So I will do that. And then it says quit and relaunch this application. And there's even a handy link to do that for you as well. Alright, so now we are in the Banana Box Install Manager. So I'm going to go back to that same web page as before. And now I'm going to click on this button here to copy to clipboard. And now it even gives me directions to paste this download URL key into the Install Manager. So that's what I'm going to do. Enter download URL. And I'm going to paste from clipboard. And I'll select OK. So that has now filled all of this in for us directly from that order. And it contains everything I need to install for the upgrade. That includes the main Banana Box application installer, HiQ instruments, the new Playable RealTracks, which I talked about in a previous tutorial, the bonus 0 pack that's included free during the Banana Box 2022 for Mac special, new artist performances, that includes one of the songs with vocal sets, again that I demonstrated in a previous tutorial, and the full set of all of the new RealTracks, sets 376 to 400. In addition, entering that URL also gave me this, all of the 49 pack items, since I added that to my purchase as well. But for now, I'm just going to install the main upgrade files. So before I do that, let's just have a look at some of these settings down below. First of all, the Banana Box install location. Now there are a few options for doing this. Probably the most common thing to do is to just install everything onto the main hard drive on your computer. And that's the default setting, and that's what it's showing me right now. Applications, Banana Box on my Macintosh hard drive. There are a few other options though. For example, I have a Banana Box Ultra Pack hard drive currently plugged into my computer. So one option is to just install everything, including the program, right onto that hard drive. And to do that, I could select this option. But there's a third choice as well, which is the one that I'm going to do. I run the program right off my main computer, but the RealTracks and RealDrums are on that external hard drive. So for me, I'm going to leave this Applications Banana Box, but I'm going to set a custom option for the RealTracks and RealDrums, and then for those, I will select the Banana Box Ultra Pack hard drive. Now it's again reminding me to make sure that I have this set to the security and privacy pane, which is what I did in a previous step. And then I'll do the same for the drum folder location. Now over in this area, this shows the download location for the installers. It also shows how much free hard drive space I have. So currently I have 50 gigabytes free, which is plenty of space for all of these installers. You can actually see the full size of all of them here. And the largest one is 10 gigabytes, then 2 gigabytes. So 50 is plenty for that. Now I do want to automatically install the downloaded files, but I do not want to automatically remove the downloaded files once installed. If you're worried about hard drive space, you can do this, but it is a useful thing to actually keep the installers as a backup. Now, you don't necessarily need to keep them on your main hard drive of your computer. You could keep them on an external drive if you wanted to. And again, this is optional. You don't need to keep those installers, but for myself anyway, I do always like to have a backup. So everything is now set and ready to go. So all I have to do now is press the download and install all button, and then the install manager will do everything for me. It will download all of these installers and it will run them all by itself without any input needed from me at all. So I can just let it do its thing, and then I can leave my computer and come back later and everything will be done for me. So I will do that right now. I'll confirm that all of this is correct. I'll have a look through the license agreement and I'll agree. And that's it. It's now going to just do its thing. And you can see it's already started downloading the first 2 files. When they're downloaded, it will automatically install them and then continue on with the next one. So I'm going to stop the video now, but I will check in again later and look and see how the progress is going with these downloads and installs. Alright, so I stepped away for a few minutes and I just returned and had a look, and it looks like the HiQ Instruments is already downloaded and installed. The main Banana Box installer has just finished downloading and it's just automatically now started installing. And it looks like it's now also moved on to Playable RealTracks Set 1 downloading, as well as the Bonus Zero Pack. And it looks like the main Banana Box application has now been installed as well, without any input needed from me at all. Alright, so I stepped away from my computer for a little while, and I came back, and it looks like everything except for the final RealTracks set is already installed, and the RealTracks have finished downloading and are in the process of installing. And now it's finished downloading and prompting me to start Banana Box. So with very little effort on my part, all of this new material has been downloaded and installed, the new program as well, and I can get started right away playing with it. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope you have fun.